All right, guys, what's up? And welcome back to the arcade. This is Jack. And yeah, I apologize ahead of time to the viewer because this video is probably going to be running significantly longer than other videos that I've made on the channel. And there's a specific reason for that because apparently, whether it's communities, whether it's content creators pushing for more and more and more, whatever the deal is, and especially with the fact that there's word out there going on that there might be a delay of the release of the Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection for whatever reason, et cetera, et cetera. I wanted to kind of chime in about this whole, the ups and downs and lefts and rights in terms of the drama of the Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection, because there are people out there, whether they're content creators or there are people out there, whether they're, viewers or whatever it is, that are basically saying, if this very specific version of this very specific port of this very specific game are not in here, I'm not buying it. You know what I mean? So first of all, I understand part of that because every one of us grew up at a different time. And before going any further, I think I should let you know a little bit more about my Mortal Kombat history, because if there's any game that I truly know what I'm talking about above any other game throughout my 41 years of living on this planet, or almost 41 years, as well as the fact that that I've been playing video games for as long as I have, since I was like 7 or 8 years old. This franchise, I know so much about it, specifically when it was in its prime. You know what I mean? That one specifically, because I really stopped playing MK after Mortal Kombat 9, also known as Mortal Kombat 2011. But perhaps that's another story for another day. We're just going to focus on the Legacy Collection and the prime Mortal Kombat games that literally put Mortal Kombat to where it is even to this very day. Now, here's my history. I first started playing Mortal Kombat when I was 8 years old, and I ran into it in the arcades. Okay. I was 8 years old. I saw it in the arcade, fell in love. And then as I started to get more and more consoles at home, I started getting various versions of that same game on various consoles. So just to go a little bit more in depth into more detail, and to save as much time as possible to make this video not like a 2-hour long video, I had, let's say, I had Mortal Kombat 1 for the Super Nintendo. I had it for the Genesis. I had it for the Sega CD. I also, let's see, had it for the Game Boy, and I also had it for the Game Gear. Now, the reason why I had it for those two was because whenever my parents didn't want to leave me home alone, they would obviously force me to go with them to wherever it was. And guess what? My Game Boy and Game Gear would come in handy because I would be bored to death, and God knows how much they would delay before coming back home because they were talking to acquaintances or friends or whatever, or business. So that Game Boy and that Game Gear came in handy, as did Mortal Kombat or whatever other game I was playing. Now, let's continue on to Mortal Kombat 2. I had the Super Nintendo version, I had the Sega Genesis version, and I had the 32X version. Now, I know some of you guys are wondering, why are you having multiple versions of every game? Well, back then, even at a young age, I understood very well that the arcade version was the superior version. And not only that, I was also one of the very few kids that would be spoiled to not only frequent the arcade on a very regular basis, but to also be given the kind of money that I was being given to spend on quarters or tokens. And we're talking $20 every single visit to the arcade. Occasionally, even more. But usually it would be $20, and I would be playing for hours on end in the arcade, and it was always a blast no matter what, because when I went to play the arcade, even though I had already gotten the home version, right, I would always go back and play the arcade. Why? Because I knew that it was the superior version. It was the best version of every single port you could possibly get, no matter what. The arcade was the best version of any version of MK that you could possibly get. Now, there were certain ports that were superior, that you were as close as you could get. For instance, the Mortal Kombat trilogy or PlayStation, right, was, apart from the load time, let's put it, I'm sorry, not Mortal Kombat trilogy, Mortal Kombat 3 for the PlayStation, apart from the load times, to me was an arcade perfect port. The sound effects and the audio were arcade perfect because it was on CD, right? And all the content was there, the blood was there, you name it, right? Plus, you could do more that you couldn't do in the arcade. So to me, the best version of MK3 that you could possibly get was on the PlayStation. Okay? Mortal Kombat trilogy, well, I also had Ultimate MK3 for the Saturn. And yes, I had a Dreamcast, and yes, I did play MK Gold on the Dreamcast. Yes, I did have Mortal Kombat 4 on the PlayStation 1. And yes, I did like Mortal Kombat Gold better than Mortal Kombat 4, because not only did it look better thanks to the, Dreamcast being more advanced, but also the fact that you had additional characters, which was great. And there were even some sound effects from the old MK games like MK2 and MK3 that were in there, right? Because obviously they had to be squeezed in, and that was perfectly fine. That did not bother me whatsoever. I loved it. I adored it. I couldn't get enough of it. Even though Mortal Kombat 4 and Mortal Kombat Gold, to me, it may not be my favorite MK, but because I was the MK fan that I was, it didn't stop me from playing the living shit out of it. And I also had, of course, MK3 version. I also had for the Super Nintendo and the Genesis. Now, as far as the Super Nintendo and Genesis versions are concerned, the one that was superior to me, right, in terms of my personal preference and my personal taste, was the Super Nintendo version, right? The Super Nintendo version of MK2 and MK3 were the better. Now, if you're talking about MK1, although I love and respect the SNES version, the Genesis was the superior version to me because it allowed you to have blood, and it allowed for the fatalities that were meant to be in the game for what they were. So to me, that was it. ABACABB, and the Genesis allowed for that. And I like the Sega CD version even more, even though all it did was the sound and the audio. That was the difference, right? Like when I got to the fight, when I pressed start and we got into the fighters select screen, the character select screen, for a few seconds it felt like I was right in the arcade, because that character select music was arcade perfect thanks to the Sega CD being a CD based game, right? But then when you played the rest of the game, guess what? It was the Genesis. That's all it was. It was a Genesis version made for the CD. One more thing. There was also this very epic intro before the game started. Very epic intro. If you don't know what I'm talking about right now, or after watching this video, go to YouTube and type in Mortal Kombat Sega CD intro. Especially if you grew up at the time that I did, it will not disappoint. It will not disappoint whatever. It is epic. It is 90s Mortal Kombat in a nutshell. Now, let's continue on to modern day, shall we? So whether there are content creators out there or people in all sorts of forms of social media that are saying, hey, let's add this version of the game, or this version of the game absolutely deserves to be in there. Now, look, I agree that every single version possible should be squeezed into the game, right? And the biggest reason is because there are people that had different types of platforms that they played on, right? So the nostalgia factor of what Mortal Kombat is that important, right? That's what ultimately a big part of Mortal Kombat's identity is, the nostalgia factor, right? Nostalgia and Mortal Kombat they go hand in hand. They're in sync together, right? Okay. However, I think we can also agree, right, that the superior version, the most important version of every single game on offer is the arcade version. And they are all there. For the games that got arcade releases, they're all there. For Mortal Kombat Trilogy, we're getting the PlayStation 1 version minus the loading times, or should I say, minus 98% of the loading times, right? Because I have noticed a split set, like a very, very minute half a millisecond pause whenever you're morphing as Shang Tsung, or when you're going from the, combat towers to the, main fight, very, very unnoticeable, hardly. I know the PC version of Mortal Kombat Trilogy is probably the most superior version. I get that. I understand that. I agree with that. But with that being said, the most important versions of this entirety of the collection is there, right? And for me personally, even if we just got the most superior version of every title, plus the rollback netcode, plus there's word that the Crypt is going to be coming in, or a version of it in the Legacy Collection and all that, for me, that's enough for the price of admission right there. I'm still paying, and you're paying, like, what is it, $49.99 or $59.99 or something like that. So I think the Switch 2 version is more expensive by like $10. But again, that's not all we're getting. We're also getting Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero. We're also getting some of the handheld versions. We're also getting some of the, obviously some of the Super NES and Genesis versions, et cetera, et cetera. Like, again, there have been so many versions of every game on multiple platforms that are coming out, and long story short, not all of them are going to make it in there. A lot of people are pissed off about Mortal Kombat Gold not being in there. I get it. But to really say that you're not going to buy this thing because of Mortal Kombat Gold being omitted or possibly omitted, I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking seriously. I think the only person that would say, like, truly mean that, is because Mortal Kombat 4 came out at a certain time when they were at a certain age, and they only had that particular platform, and it plays a big deal to them. Like, to them, that's what nostalgia Mortal Kombat is. But in my opinion, humbly speaking and respectfully speaking, I think those are a very, very small percentage of the audience, especially when you look at like the other Mortal Kombat games that those people have likely played in one version or another, or have at least seen one version or another. And for the people that only had, for instance, one version of a home port, and then let's say they never got to play the superior version, aka the arcade version, or in this case the PlayStation version of Mortal Kombat Trilogy, for instance, or something like that. Again, I think even to this day, and despite the nostalgia, I think, again, even though those home ports hit differently because of the time of when you were a kid and all that, I think, people would still gravitate towards the superior version of the game, right? So it's like, I think, see, the reason why I wanted to make this video was because I don't want this game to get delayed any more than it could possibly get delayed, because people's expectations or people's requests are going, so far and so far ahead to where it's like, this thing is never going to get released until every single version of every Mortal Kombat has come out on this. I mean, first of all, again, don't forget what you're getting, right? And on top of that, with that being said, there's the fact that you've always got DLC, right? And it, like, in your heart of hearts, right? In your Mortal Kombat heart of hearts, do you really want this game to be significantly delayed just because of one version of one title not being in the game? Think about that for a minute. You know what I mean? I mean, is like Mortal Kombat is about, like, when I think Mortal Kombat, Prime Mortal Kombat, I think about the original trilogy. I think about MK1, MK2, and yes, vanilla MK3. Even though Ultimate MK3 is definitely a game that I hold special dear to my heart, as well as MK Trilogy, when I think about classic Mortal Kombat, I think about the original trilogy, MK1, MK2, MK3, right? Are we getting the superior versions of those games? Yes. Are we getting the arcade version of Mortal Kombat 4? Yes. Are we getting rollback netcode and online play, as well as possibly on the other versions as well? Yes. Are we getting a possible crypt? Yes. Are we getting documentary footage that we've never seen before, as well as interviews and stuff like that? Yes. Are we getting the definitive Mortal Kombat classic experience and then some? Yes, we are. And you're talking to, again, I already explained in detail. Well, I mean, I could easily, I think I even made a video possibly about my Mortal Kombat, history at some point on my main channel, and I might just, put it on here, but in terms of the link in my posts. But Mortal Kombat is more than just one title. Even though there are those of us that prefer one title over another, there's that one title for everybody that it's like, I became a Mortal Kombat fan because of this particular title. I get it, right? But I think we can all agree that Mortal Kombat is beyond just one title. It's not just the amazing effects that the original had and the controversy it raised and the rating system. It's not just the overwhelming success of MK2. It's not because of the modernness that was brought into MK3. It's a combination of all of these different things that makes Mortal Kombat Mortal Kombat. Even if you look at games that came out later, like with the 3D era version games, despite the fact that there were flaws with, those titles, there are aspects to those games that, again, add to what make Mortal Kombat Mortal Kombat. So all these different things are intact. Are we getting secrets? Yes. Are we getting, like, the DNA of what put Mortal Kombat on the map is here. Okay? So, since the DNA is there, I think we can all rest easy that we're going to get everything we need in the game. And as far as DLC is concerned, it's certainly not off the table, right? So just because something may not come out at launch doesn't mean it may not come out in the future. And if there's a Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection Part 2, which would include the 3D era, obviously, which would be fantastic, by the way, which also will or will not happen depending on the success, the financial success of the sales of this particular Legacy Collection that's going to be coming out hopefully sooner than later. Who says that they can't add those things later on because of time constraints or whatever? And if you look at the developers, we know that they're capable, right? So if they're capable, then we can't lose faith. And just because we can't get something at a certain point in time doesn't mean that we won't get it later. And it doesn't mean that all hope is lost and that we're not being heard. So with that being said, as a fellow Mortal Kombat fan, as well as a content creator, and someone who literally grew up with this franchise as much as I did, I think it's more important for us to realize what we're getting compared to what we're not. And we got to realize that, hey, the ratio is pretty damn good. And on top of that, in the year 2025, in terms of the way a lot of games are now, I think it's amazing that we're getting not only a big rush of nostalgia back at us with Mortal Kombat, we're also getting to revisit the games that we grew up loving. What got us into gaming, what got us into a franchise, what got us going to the arcades, what got us into the story, the lore, all that kind of stuff. Like, and we get to learn new things that we didn't back then because of this, of what's going to be included in this documentary. For those of us that didn't understand how all of this was created. So, with that being said, I am here peacefully celebrating the upcoming release of this game, with as well as a deep appreciation to the developers that are working on it, and as well as appreciation for the content creators that continue to make content about it. But with that being said, we need to have, realistic expectations, because the more that we request to get added to this game on top of the insane amount of stuff that we're getting already, we don't want this to get delayed so much to where it just interferes with everything. Let the developers release what they meant to release, and then post-launch, there's gonna be, first of all, when we get launch, there's gonna be plenty to keep us busy. But then post-launch, again, DLC in the year 2025 is certainly not off the table. And again, when it comes to all these games that came out so many years ago that are being brought back today, like the Capcom Fighting Collection, for instance, like, remember, there's always a possibility that whatever might be missing from this Legacy Collection, whether it's in the form of DLC in this particular game for free, or whether it's in Legacy Collection 2 added on to that or whatnot, because they couldn't in the first one, again, I truly believe that we will get it. Because the Mortal Kombat community is a very passionate community. It is a community that has grown over time. And the OGs like myself, right? We have a very deep understanding and appreciation for what the franchise is, which is one of the reasons why we have certain opinions when it comes to the direction that Mortal Kombat has gone in recent times, right? And in closing, I wanted to also say that damn was it good to see John Tobias playing on that arcade cabinet next to Ed Boon. Because as far as I understand, The last game he worked on was Mortal Kombat 4. And ever since then, it's just been Ed and the other original, and then two of the other original guys, and then obviously the other people that have come later on, et cetera, et cetera. But the co-creator himself, John Tobias, obviously has been missing in action ever since 4. So when I saw that trailer and I saw him come back as an OG MK fan, my only request, and I'm not alone in this, I'm pretty sure, my request is, if Ed Boon decides that, hey, whatever Mortal Kombat game in the future is going to come out, that it's going to be his final one, my request is that John Tobias and Ed Boon co-create it just like they did years ago and give us one last hurrah from the original creators of Mortal Kombat. That is my biggest request above all. And guess what? If they do that, not only would it be a dream come true, but if they do that, I would actually purchase that Mortal Kombat game, because I know for a fact, I mean, granted, there's going to be a lot of footage shown about the game ahead of time, but I know for a fact, right? Or should I say a high probability, that the game itself will have that old school Mortal Kombat DNA in the game, with the technology and capabilities of today's era. Now that would be a Mortal Kombat game that I think everybody would rave about. So with that being said, guys, I'm going to end it here. Again, I apologize for the length of this video, but I had to say what I had to say, because my passion for the franchise, especially for the original trilogy, is very deep. So with that being said, guys, let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Shout out to everybody that has listened all the way through. Thank you very much, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.